What is that fancy background? Look at that.
Wow.
I kind of want to turn our videos off so we can see the awesome Aubrey picture.
Yeah.
Do you have any new hardware stories, Eric?
Did I talk to you with you about the mesh core
A
and
little
and
bit.
the okay, yeah, I'd just be going a little further with that. So it's kind of amazing, to say the least.
We should just have a conversation about that at some point.
Yeah, I'm like it's
Be a next webinar. I'm uh,
yeah,
I'm kind of excited if we get this project or not. I'm kind of excited to see if I can do the football tracking thing and then integrate
yeah,
that into a video game. But the
yeah.
fact that
Looking through those videos, it's just a cool project.
the
Hmm.
football one.
Yeah.
How could how could you not want to work on a football AI video game project?
Well, I'm
Okay.
totally not interested in football at all, but integrating a human into a hardware, into a software, like all of that ecosystem. And then if you look at like a Top Golf type experience, integrating into the POS system and inventory and order, like all that, it's a massive train set. I like train sets.
Solving problems. Okay, well, let's get started. We are 2 minutes past the hour. So, you guys ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric, Andy, excited to jump in with you guys today. Um, Topic today, of course, working with you guys at Inventive, I've gotten to see firsthand how AI has really reshaped the way that we think about architecture, especially in some of these recent builds that we've been working on that have been highly AI powered. So let's just start with some of our real stories. What have you been building, and how did AI change how we made some of those architectural decisions, beginning, middle, and what we learned kind of along the way?
You get to talk about your mesh thing now.
There you go,
There we
Eric.
go. There we go. I think so we've been building a lot of kind of web applications, something that can be accessed via mobile or desktop. Uh, and they're pretty complex. So I think when we talk about architecture, uh, like that's a really important component of it. And especially when we're looking at how we're using AI, we're using AI to do not quite a dark factory, but kind of, one person runs a team of agents. So the code gets written insanely fast compared to how we were writing code 2 years ago. Uh, so I think the thing about the architecture component of that is the architecture gets built fast. And if we don't actually design it up front, I think, Andy, I think you and I had a comment on a Slack where I'm like, wow, big design up front used to be like the bad word that we've been, pounded into our heads for the last 20 years. And now it's like, well, we actually need to slow down, get the not only on the product side, but on the technical side, really design, what does the architecture look like, and make sure we're making the right choices because the AI could just take off either on a good path or a bad path, and it doesn't really care which path it's on.
And it's interesting for us because we build lots of different products in lots of different industries, and we have to hand off to different teams that have different things. So I think where we can take the time to do things right ahead of time is defining an architecture. So we can pick tools, we can pick architectural boundaries and how different systems communicate and standardize that as like, here's a document for this type of a system versus we want this lightweight rapid thing, has many less technologies, many less boundaries, and we can standardize on that. And when we kick off a project, we can point it at one of these predefined systems, if you will. But I don't know how. It's not really a pattern that a company that has one product that hands off to one team not quite the same thing. So for us,
Mhm.
it's great. Every time we go and do a new project, we bring all of these. Our almost it's fascinating because the traditional SDLC side of things, like agile, so there are certain agile ceremonies that now we need to do. Like we should absolutely do a retrospective every week or every 2 weeks. It seems like now to pull all of the learnings back from one team and then find a mechanism to replicate that out to all the other teams so that as an organization, at an architectural level and boundaries and all that, uh, everything kind of improves over time. And depending on how large a organization is, so if you are like a medium to large enterprise, you could totally steal that playbook as well. Spend some time to decompose the different types of systems that you tend to build and then do the same for your team processes because I don't think they're always one for one either.
Mhm.
Now I'm rambling.
No, it's great. I'm curious too if in some of the recent projects that you guys have worked on that have been so fast, like Eric was describing, that you made some of these architectural decisions up front that you later had to walk back, and what were some of the consequences from that? Do you have any specific examples?
Well, the most recent product that we built, I think, has the learning part. Like we learned in real time a problem, where we made an assumption, we went off and built some features, and in this case, we based it off of a certain AI specification. Ended up being the wrong AI specification. And so what ended up happening is some of the assumptions leaked into the data model. So the core underlying piece of the application was not wrong, like it worked, but because the shape of the data wasn't right and we needed to integrate with external systems, those external systems had some assumptions about the API structure. We ended up building this thing really fast, but then as you do sometimes, the last thing we did was integrate with some of these external systems. That's kind of like an old Dell story, Eric, where it's like, let's have everybody work in a silo and then we'll connect them together at the end and it'll just be magical. And nobody talked about it. So in our case, we took this product live and everything worked great, except for the external dependency was not aligned. And so then we had to go through some gyrations to unroll all the way back to the underlying structure, had to re-import the data like that. It wasn't bad. It was just noisy in the end.
Hmm.
And I prefer that a project not have noise when going to production. Preferably we do
Right.
that
And
or else
but
you
like,
have positive.
and I almost would say, we know how to solve that, right? We know how to solve that by, hey, let's pick up and do the riskiest things first, right? Could have gone and done the integration kind of work first, but it's also with the AI, it's really easy to just say, hey, I got this stuff spec'd. Just go do that stuff as fast as you can. I'll get to the other part because I feel like if the agents aren't just churning through my subscription tokens, I'm wasting them, right? So I think that's part of the tension we have.
My
Right.
favorite thing these days, hey, I'm going to go to a movie. I'll talk to you in the morning. Let me know when you're done building the thing.
Yeah.
And that's great because that's what allows us to have one engineer managing a portfolio of code bases and have good success. But it all just reiterates the longer we spend between looking at what's being built, which is the goal, the more important it is to do that work up front to make sure that what's built is right. So
Hmm. Absolutely. To that point, and in some of the kind of beginning planning that you guys are doing, why is the code base the variable for AI build and not necessarily the tool?
you want to start or you want me?
Yeah, I can start. I think well, one, I kind of look at the tools as right. We can actually can throw a mirage of or a mirage. I don't even know what word I'm trying to say. A host of different models, right?
Yeah.
And different, yeah, and different harnesses. Uh, and we can actually use them in conjunction to get kind of the best results possible. But the code base, if you're starting from scratch, right, you could just say, hey, let's use this known pattern, let's do that. If you're working with an existing code base, those things are just multiplying what's already there, good or bad, right? If if you have tech debt, and you're building on tech debt and you don't pay down the tech debt, you're essentially accumulating more tech debt, just like 10 times faster than you were with humans, with a human only team. So I think that's it's kind of, I have kind of a playbook, like when I go look at an existing team, an existing application of like, let's go down this checklist. Do they have CI? Do they have database migrations? Do they kind of have all of these infrastructure-ish or I guess iteration zero kind of work done? And is the team following it? And I would do that for human teams, but kind of the same thing with AI. If you don't have it, you'll start running into these things faster. And if you haven't paid attention, uh, that's the thing that changes. So I kind of look at that as, you know, one variable, or it's like a polynomial, right? Of all the variables that could make it go fast or crash pretty hard.
Mhm. Andy.
Yeah, I'm trying to think more on that iteration zero thing. I think we've recently started to treat iteration zero as a concept that we've expanded now that we're doing AI, where maybe a collection of skills, or we may be wrapping those skills up as plugins. But there's also a formalization around how to use those skills as part of the normal life cycle. And I feel like we used to do CI/CD, but CI/CD is even changing in that we can snap agents in where people may have been more involved. So things like doing, code review every time. It's not just run tests and hope those greens are actually green. It's also, let's go and run a code review, get feedback, have the system fix what was found, resubmit it, run another code review. Like, you can do that kind of iterating churn amazingly fast and cheap. Like, we all talk about, oh my God, my token bill is crazy. But if I talk about the same number of iterations for the same type of work with humans, it's like, do we really need to do that? Teams tend to not do, they turn those things off. So there's lots of things beyond the code in the code base that are worth investing so that, again, we can go faster in a safe way.
Mhm. I feel like I continue to hear this theme, and selfishly, as a product person, I kind of want to ask you guys as engineers how you think about this, which is it's kind of a slow down to go fast kind of mentality. And, a lot in agile, we've created waterfall, such a dirty word. You don't want to do a lot of this planning up front. You want to define what is most important, what is priority for the business, and really kind of focus on those areas. You'll worry about some of these iterations later. Um, but I'm curious, kind of how do you grapple between those two kind of like dichotomies of don't necessarily do a lot of this planning up front, and weekly kind of redetermine what you are focused on in this world where you're going so fast, and if you don't do some of that planning, it can actually cause you to go slower downstream. How do you guys
Well, I think
maybe?
we have to understand that both of these concepts were put in place when everything was human driven. And so if you make a mistake, it will be expensive. So if we can minimize mistakes as early upstream as possible, less expense over time, and we can deliver on time. So again, if a human makes a mistake, that delivery date starts to slip. So that's a problem. The other side is if we're not launching rockets, and so that's kind of the big driver for a waterfall system, is people will die if we fuck this up. Most of the projects that businesses make don't really have that problem. And so to take both of those as systems we need to do and apply them to AI is kind of unfair to AI. Like, we're bringing the baggage of managing humans forward with us. And so we have a few projects where in one product we're building, we say, okay, we've got to get the POC done, and it has emergency, like, urgency behind it. So it's important we get that thing done without worrying about the future roadmap. And then after that, there may be an MVP, but really this is just defining batched operations of good enough software that we can make bad decisions as long as it works. And then we can completely throw all that away and make completely new decisions for the next phase because it's so cheap to actually do the coding part. And so we have another client who doesn't call it POC and MVP. They have phase zero and phase one and phase two, but it's the same thing. It's like, here's my bucket of really high priority work. It's important that we get it done in the right shape, but we don't necessarily have to worry about what's next, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So Aubrey, I would think of it like previously, and this is on the product side as well, right? Like you could spend all this time defining all the use cases and all of the features, but by the time the dev team finally got around and delivered, it's like there are business things that changed that now changed the course of how it was designed. Uh,
Mhm.
and because we can go faster, I think one, it actually it's going to be a better product if we can spend more time and be more specific around the product design. But yeah, and utilizing AI, I've been working with some product people that yeah, we'll go through and kind of define everything, but now they're actually working in like we already have a design system in Figma, so now they can design the screens in Figma that they're not handing it off to a designer.
Mhm.
They're then able to kind of put say a 10 step workflow together, move things around, kind of look through it, chat with the engineers about what's going to happen under the hood, uh, and then, in the matter of like 3 hours, have that turned into a clickable HTML prototype. It's not doing anything under the hood, but now you can actually show it. You could, walk the client through it. So, I think utilizing these same tools to doing more of this upfront work on the product side is going to be huge because especially if you show a client, hey, this is what it's going to look and feel like, you know, you can kind of go through the let's pretend we're doing this for real. What is it like
Mhm.
when you take a PO and you enter it into this part of the system, and they can give you real feedback where sometimes you miss those in the when you're interviewing people. So I really like the idea of utilizing this more upfront because then again when we go to really do the code, you know we can just kind of
You're
bang that
removing
out. That kind of goes to what Andy was saying is like, hey, we could let this thing go for like 2 days straight and it will build everything. And because we spent the upfront time getting feedback quicker, we know, at the end of those 2 days, as long as the AI didn't produce bugs, which it does, it should be a pretty good thing coming out the other end. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely changed the way I've been thinking about projects for like, the last 20 years. So pretty wild.
or if you're launching a new product, which we're Inventive is kind of going down the road of let's make a new product every month. Like
Mhm.
that's so exciting and achievable. I worked at Volusion for a while, and Volusion's initial claim to fame, pre-AI, pre-product management, like none of these things existed. A customer would say, "Hey, I'd like this feature that would make this platform infinitely more valuable, or unblock me, or whatever." Well, the owner would just stay up that night and build the feature, and the customer would wake up in the morning. It's like, oh my God, you fixed my problem. We're totally in that world now where you could wake up in the morning as a product person, figure out what the problem is, have a call with a customer, have the engineer build it, or you could build it now. Like even that's a doable thing. And you can ship new features, multiples daily, and
Mhm.
that's fascinating. And that gets rid of like you should probably still have like what's our product roadmap and what are big initiatives and like all those things are still important. But when we only operate at that level, we kind of miss the what would make customers happy, even in one-off scenarios. One-offs were hard to chase because you end up with like configuration goo or a feature that only one customer needs. But I feel like we're in a world now where the customer has to feel amazing value, amazing customer service, or they can just fly the middle finger and go build their own thing. They don't really need you anymore. The value, has to be worth or juice or is it juice has to be worth the squeeze or what was
That's
that?
it. Yeah.
Or just worth the squeeze, something like that. Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. I feel like the design and planning phase used to be months, and now if you could do it in a couple of days, you're getting this feedback quicker. That sort of upfront planning isn't maybe as dirty word as it once was. The days of getting 24-week engineering estimates are hopefully over.
I'm finding that's one of the biggest problems right now is re-educating everybody. There's fear on the AI side, but I feel like we've all spent so much time building education and knowledge around our understanding of how these things work that the whole script's been changed. Like it's exciting for some folks. Like if you like all this change, is great. But other folks are like, all my cheese has been moved, not just one thing, but like the whole world changes every week. And so I have to fight these isms that we've drug around with us. Some have become more important, more valuable, and other ones have become their own. Like agile was the amazing thing to this dirty word called waterfall, but I think both of them are kind of dirty words now in this new
Yeah.
paradigm. We just don't have a new word to put in place yet.
There's some PMs in the influencer world workshopping some. I'll let you guys know.
No, very
Um,
good.
okay, so speaking of, this theme of going fast with AI, let's get back a little bit more technical. What specifically makes a code base fast for AI in your experience? Maybe Eric, if you want to start with this one.
Uh, I think having a clear architecture, clear stack, like, hey, this is how we're going to handle web stuff. This is how we'll handle uh, background tasks that can't be handled in the web tier. Uh, I think kind of other pieces around that is having a solid data model, having kind of migrations, like all the pieces in place that would make a human team fast. I think are those. The other piece, right, the Carpathy wiki. I don't shut up about this. Having the wiki in the code base, not only for requirements, but all of the gotchas, like that's the piece that really I think helps the AI from continually making the same mistake. Like you could teach it, hey, nope, I understand the data model looks like this, but the business requirements are X. Oh, that's good to know that. Thank you for letting me know. It's like, okay, write it down because I don't want to have this
Mhm.
conversation every day when we wake up and start a new session. So I think that's one of the technical pieces that captures kind of, I would say it's like the dungeon master scenario where like you have that one developer who's dungeon master who can lead you through the dungeons. Almost every old system has that. So now we want that to be, fast and accessible to the LLMs. I think that's really the piece that speeds it up because all the other technical pieces, yes, allow it to add code quickly, run tests, make sure it's not breaking things, but that one piece, that kind of hidden knowledge in how the system is supposed to operate is the thing that if it when it's reading the code, if it comes to the wrong conclusion every time by reading it, then that's going to cause the churn of like, oh, we just did something wrong, now we got to rework it. So I don't know. That's
My
kind of my
my
things.
follow up. So if Eric is talking about putting structure in place, my thing is assuming that you missed something. And the reason I say that is there's a tool called Ponytail. I'm sure there are many of them, but this one is like that old gray-haired curmudgeon-y C profile on disk assessment. Like he looks at the code base and says, you don't need this crap. You're replicating code for no reason. We need to pull that together. Have some kind of a process that just is, was it the 13th man? Like there are lots of different scenarios, but where it's going to look at the system and say, this is wrong. This could be better. And then the very next step is to go back to what Eric is talking about and formalize the thing that you missed, bring it back to either a knowledge base or put a system in place or put a step in your publishing pipeline. Uh, Whatever it is, formalize that education. And that's kind of where I was at with that weekly retrospective instead of once a month or whatever it may be, or you just don't do them. Actually have the retrospective, but have it focused from the, at least from my experience, you have everybody gets in a room. It's like we spend 20 minutes talking about what worked great, and then we talk about what didn't work, and then we kind of choose some of the things that we're not going to fix to be fixed. Um, Fix them. Like actually have a focused meeting on what are the few things that we can do better. Go do them better, because then you can take that and apply it to all the teams and all the code bases and so on. And it's this rapid iteration of learning and improvement. Um, so I hate the idea that, ooh, we put our thing in place. The problem we have that I don't think anybody thinks about is just because you put a system in place, and even if you are doing the retrospective, there's a part of this that we don't control. When they launched, I think it was Opus 5 recently, everybody's like, what the fuck? Nothing works. I don't know what's going on. And it was a new model that got released, and that new model made a lot of bad decisions. And you'd ask it, I told you to do this very specific thing. And it literally said, yeah, I chose not to do that for reasons. Sorry, fuck you. And it's like, so even if you had this amazing system in place, the model you don't control, because in theory you want the new model because the new model's better in some cool way, but you don't know in what way it's better and in what way it's worse. So more of these things help, but they're still not entirely in control.
Hmm.
And I saw like a lot of the Anthropic people recently were like, hey, if you are still carrying around the same agent MD and your skills, go delete them all. Right?
Hmm.
If you wrote those for Haiku or Sonnet, go delete them because the new model can do most of it, and you're actually making it worse by doing those. So that's kind of the other piece of the retrospective of,
Yeah.
we're carrying all these tools and crutches for the older models, and now it's like, oh,
Don't just make it an
yeah,
additive process.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
That was actually going to be my exact follow-up question. It's a bit tactical, but I've actually heard this through, the AI influencers out there that the models are so good now that you don't need to necessarily have this markdown or wiki that you keep referencing as context. And you're actually wasting your tokens because of this, because they are so much better at having this memory and referencing some of this past context and learning. Has that actually been your experience? Have you gone and deleted the markdowns, or how are you handling that now? I guess you guys mentioned a couple like staple like principal skills that you like to keep
Well,
in your
so
chat, but
on the wiki side, so we internally have a tool that we'll bring to market soon, the content engine. Inside of the content engine, there are a bunch of different clients. Each client has a bunch of different projects, and all of the context of each of those things is information for that client. And so that's part of the wiki that I assume the tool doesn't have. Uh, Part of the wiki that maybe you can revisit and delete are some of those, do things this way, or you read this to make better decisions about process. Those things, yes, definitely revisit those. But if somebody's telling you as a blanket statement, delete your wiki, that's an influencer who probably isn't actually delivering real products to real customers. Because you'll see a lot of them. It's like, oh, we got this new model, and let's do the benchmarks, and look at this thing I built in 4 hours. It's amazing. You should follow me. It's like, let me know when you ship that thing and get customer complaints. You deleted your wiki and it now doesn't know anything.
right.
Yeah, I think so I think Claude Code had released a new Doctor command to kind of go back and look to see what it should do. And it on some of my project I ran it, it was like, hey, actually you're doing pretty well. You didn't over specify a lot of the agents. So I think most of mine I'd already been trying to keep it lean, I guess.
Hmm.
But I mean, I could see if you've been using the same one for like the last year and a half, you could have a ton of cruft.
Might be
So
time to
it's
go.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Well, that's one thing I have to follow up on, just because I mentioned this ponytail skill.
Right.
Ponytail is great because it's basically a doctor for your code base. It's constantly watching. You can leave it turned on and it will be the doctor in real time. And it's got a couple different ways of looking at things. But I kind of look at all of those tools, I treat them more as an advisor. Go look at my thing, build me a plan, let me know what you're thinking about, and then I'll cherry pick the things that I want to go do. Because if I operate it blindly, I lose touch with what's going on in my system, so it may change over time, and I don't understand why. And so I'm hesitant. I want us to run those tools, but be aware, like all things, be aware of the decisions that are being made so that you can be kept in the loop because everything does change weekly. So
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Take us in a little bit of a different direction here. When working with AI from building a product from scratch, or maybe working within young, messy code, versus working with AI inside of like a legacy code base. How have you found those to differ? Why could maybe in the legacy code base that be easier? Talk through some of your experiences there, maybe what some of your learnings have been in those two kind of working with AI inside of those two different types of code bases.
Um, I think our experience pre-AI is still relevant. Anytime I've been brought into an existing team with an existing code base, I have the same playbook that Eric does. It's like you're missing all these like fundamental human things. Let's get those in place and get you guys to behave as professional software developers, some of which can be in the code base, some of which can be process. I think the same practice is relevant when bringing AI to a new code base or an old, outdated, broad, deep, ugly code base. You still got to build the road to production in a way that is repeatable, not a dirt path to production. I
Mhm.
don't know if that answers your question, Eric. You may have a different point of
I
view.
was going to say on the kind of legacy older code bases have got a lot of cruft. Uh, a lot of the patterns are already there, the vertical slices. So it's like, hey, we got to tweak this, or we got to add another thing like X. It's all there. So it's actually really easy for it to copy and kind of do the same pattern. Whereas on a new code base, it's like, like it's like a choose your own adventure. We're going to add this new capability. It's unlike anything that exists. It's like, I've got 5 ways to do this. Uh, and some, that's on a spectrum of a really good way to do it technically and a horrible way to do it technically. But from the UI, you wouldn't actually know the difference until you get a lot of users or you have a lot of transactions. So
Mhm.
those are, I think, some of the bits and pieces where it's like actually sometimes on the existing code base that's in production that we know can sustain the traffic. It's actually a little easier, except for when you run into the, hey, you just change the part that there's no code, there's no tests, and we're now like, okay, let's push it to production, and hopefully we didn't miss a weird thing. So
Right. Yeah, it definitely makes sense conceptually that a legacy code base would have a lot of already established patterns and has already done a lot of that upfront design, planning, system architecture that we were just talking about, whereas your young from scratch build wouldn't have a lot of those patterns in place. So maybe you're having to do a whole lot more hand holding as an architect, and therefore it's just not as easy, I guess, to reframe my question as easy versus hard. What happened when we rebuilt our own site? Did we run into any of these, Andy?
Well, so rebuilding our own site, I think probably needs 2 seconds of why we did that.
Yeah, go for
So
it.
we started in 10 years ago, the early business. Let's do WordPress. WordPress is easy. It's two guys in a room. Uh, didn't have a dev team or a need. Somewhere along that journey, as what normally happens with your marketing site, we've got lots of different shapes and brands, and so it's discombobulated, ugly. Decide to rebuild it. Well, we're a dev shop. We should definitely develop our own thing and have devs write code and show a cleanly coded website. Everybody will care about that. But what that meant was time to market with a new page required a designer and a copywriter and a developer and so what that meant is your site, you fixed one problem, it no longer gets discombobulated and looking different because you can't do anything. So then we started looking at a different approach. We were looking at Webflow. Webflow is great. You can definitely go a lot faster, but it still kind of wants a little bit of design input and a little bit of dev input. So now we've built our own tool, and that own tool really focuses on marketing. What does marketing need to do? It needs to do everything quickly because something is relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow. Marketing is good at telling stories, but then everything between telling that story and getting the story in public, uh, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the things that do matter is that it's on brand, it's consistent, it looks good, like those basic things. But with AI, we can build that as a pipeline, a repeatable pipeline. So we now have a system where marketing can put together a page brief. It's all content, and the system can take that. It's got a library of slices as a common or components. It can kind of sort the cards, put content with components. It can also generate all the images and do all the brand colors, and out pops a web page. So for us, to me, there weren't a lot of people involved, so it was easy. And now it's a system and repeatable. So I to me, it's not like, oh, this was really hard, just because we've been playing in this space for so long now. So
Mhm. Yeah.
if I answered your question at all, it's probably way less interesting.
Well, I mean, so if you double click on that, but like the image generation, like you spent a lot of time figuring out how to right how to get AI to make good images and all the prompts and like there's a ton that goes into it. It's like I couldn't go make what you made, you know,
I've
and have it in a
accumulated
week because there's like the accumulation of kind of all
I've
this
accumulated a
is
lot of knowledge over the past couple of years because I have had this need. So even I don't know if everybody can see the image behind our ugly faces, except Aubrey has a beautiful face. But it's actually a picture of Aubrey's character. And now we have lots of characters, but
Mm.
it speaks to a different need. Even if building a website was fast and easy, I still had a very difficult problem as a business owner. I like to put pictures of our team on our marketing messaging so that you know who you're interacting with. And so I feel that's important. But getting a picture of a person sitting in a coffee shop just so with the lighting right and the right camera and like, oh, that you can't have fuck off on your t-shirt and like, getting all those things to line up wasn't ever happening. And so that was what drove me to I need a tool that understands my brand colors and the structure and have characters for all of our people. And now we're to a point where we're launching different sites. We have a core character library, the people that work for us, but each site has a different brand configuration. So we can put on different clothes and have them be professional versus be maybe more playful. And it's ironic because again, everything changes every week. This journey that we've been on, I initially had to go train a model for a character and be able to send the right prompt. And I've had, depending on the model you use, like my Drake, one of our developers, it really wanted Drake to be a black dude. I'm like, he's not a black dude. Like none of the images are a black dude. So I had, certain things where you have to add extra prompts, or for whatever reason it wanted James to have lots of hair. I'm like, he doesn't have any hair. So there's just like all these isms that early on you had to work through to get to a point where you could just put content in one end and get a website out with consistency that you can trust. And I think a lot of that knowledge totally not relevant anymore. You've got C Dance and Nano Banana and like all the models are good. You still need to know the steps. Like in this step, I use this model to give me my base. And then from that, I can generate a character sheet. And then from that, I can do all these other things. But so yeah, it's a journey, but
Mhm.
it's easier to do now.
So the tools didn't necessarily clean up the site. Deciding what belonged did. And it sounds like a lot of your time and effort was exactly that. Was what was your vision for the site? What belonged? What images were you going to create? And then use these tools to make it happen
Yeah,
super fast.
definitely. And it's a great thing to circle back on having clear vision for what I wanted to achieve. And I wanted to achieve it by simplifying. And in this case, simplification is removing all the humans, or at least all the humans in the middle. Uh, and so having that clarity then forced it to go down a road where everything is automated. It's not necessarily, all AI related, but it very much has a wiki involved. Like, what is this website about? What is this business about? So that it can take a content brief, sprinkle all the fairy dust on it, and have something relevant. So it's a good tie off. But yeah, it's still a formal, structured, guardrails in place kind of a process to get clean outputs.
Mhm. Absolutely. So it sounds like one of the decisions, of course, in our 10-year-old site that we decided was let's rebuild. But again, maybe one of these phenomenon in architectural code based decisions is when do you decide to refactor versus rebuild versus migrate? And in this architecture using AI world, how are you guys thinking about some of these decisions?
I'll just start
Eric,
with, I think,
Andy?
everything up for grabs and let Eric answer.
oh. So
There you go.
I think prior to AI, we would always like postpone and do everything we could to not do a rebuild because doing a rebuild was like, hundreds of thousands of dollars of budget, whether it's in-house or outsourced, or maybe $1 million or more. And it was a lot of risk about, hey, are we just going to, I think back to the Dell thing, was it like for like? Was it every existing feature for the new feature? Or do we take this time to kind of reimagine what the user experience is? Because the cost was so great. I'm looking at it now where it's like we can actually go fix all of the tech debt. We could fix the architectural things kind of in place, and it's significantly cheaper. Like I don't want to say free, but it's almost free. We can get I think like how one of the things there's always been a lot of pushback is like it's not quite architecture, but it's like, hey, do we have unit tests? We do, but we kind of stopped doing them because we spent more time making unit tests than actually doing features. Now, I have a standing rule. I'm like, I want 95% code coverage of all the tests because
Why the fuck not?
it took an extra
Yeah.
hour. Like, fine, because this did this like, 30 times faster than I was going to do it. Uh, and so I kind of look at that, which is, unless you have some really horrible dependencies, and they're either, and when I say that, it's either something that's like really legacy that like can't that's preventing you from like getting in Docker containers or preventing you from kind of getting to some of the modern deployment technologies, or it's got a horrible licensing component to it that you're like, we just need to remove this because it either costs too much or it's going to prevent us from scaling without extra expense. Then in most cases, I'm like, let's go in and fix those. Like every time, and if you kind of pull this back to, hey, let's spend the time doing the design work on the product side. Now it's like, hey, while you're doing that and take the time to get that right, we'll go fix a bunch of things. And then we'll get a more thought out and planned out design, and then we'll go implement features, and we're still going to be, way faster than we were before without doing any of that work. So uh, I definitely think spending the time and kind of fixing up stuff on a legacy code base uh, is totally worth it. Uh, Unless like you're on COBOL and then you're like, then I think the other piece of that is like doing a migration. So if you are on like something that you just like we have to get off of this. And I also look at that as like how well are the AI models trained on those technologies, because there's some frameworks that they're still pretty niche, and it's like let's just get out of that. Let's get on kind of the regular stack that AI knows about, whether it's React or like if you could pick front end technologies or back end technologies. But I think as we keep going with new models, they're still trained on the same data set. And if there's more of that content on the internet, that's probably a better choice. Uh, because like one of the things I'm using that LLM wiki in my code base is because we have some of these weird dependencies that aren't well known. So we've got to like add links to all the documentation, and we're kind of working around the lack of knowledge in the model. So uh, yeah, I definitely a big fan of just like go do the open heart surgery that you were terrified of doing in the past with the human team, and go fix the things.
Mhm.
To me, it's an exciting time. I probably won't go into the legacy side as much. Um, we have always said any consultancy that I've been at, or even in a product company, we can do anything. But I think a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, that was to some degree a bullshit sales statement. Yes, we can do anything, but it's going to take you a lot of time and it's going to cost you a lot of money. And I may have to go hire some subject matter experts to actually pull that off. But where we're at today, I'm excited because if you have a great product idea, we can do anything. Like it's Eric has some great hardware integration stories. I just built a video game from scratch using Unreal and C++. Like those are things that just weren't achievable in the same way that they are. and you would have to become really smart in the thing before you could do it. So now when I say internally, let's build a product a month, totally doable. Let's build a company a month, totally doable. Let's build an incubation thing where we can now take on all these really smart people with great ideas and build them, a product and a company for thousands of dollars, not maybe tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, but just a few $1,000. Like, you can do so much that it's exciting. And this is why when I hear like Microsoft's and all them say, SaaS is dead, I think that's a bullshit marketing statement also, because you always have to have a payment layer and security. Like, the things that SaaS are have to exist. What I think they're talking about, we had a product that we've been dependent on for many, many years, over 10 years. Uh, they pissed us off. We replaced them. It's like, that would have never been doable because it would have been a whole team of people. We would have had to figure out the product side. It would have cost $250,000, would have taken at least, and it's just, a year of time, not worth it to a business. But now we're in a position where it's like, I need to do a thing subtly different. Nobody does it for me. Cool. Build it. Like, it's easy to do. So,
Yeah. No, I think you guys are onto something. I think so. I think Eric, you had a moment of saying it doesn't cost a lot, it's virtually free. And of course, there's costs associated. And I think Andy, you kind of talked about like costs and expenses and things like this that can be related in deciding to refactor or rebuild. But what are some of those costs that you guys see, or what is the most expensive kind of like architectural mistakes that you've seen
well, I want to
teams
channel
make?
I'll channel the inner James, our operations guy, my
Yeah.
business partner. He's been with me, managing me, next to me, like, he understands my mind is nuts. The opportunity cost is a cost. If I am working on one of these, building a video game is totally relevant. I was doing it for a sales prospect, but it also meant I wasn't working on these other things because this is really cool. It's like the squirrel or ooh, shiny object, or whatever you want to call it. That's probably our biggest problem now, is that anybody can have a good idea and can make it, and probably didn't pause to ask the mature people in the room, should I? That is probably our biggest cost. Token cost, we're seeing that maybe people need more than one subscription so that we can get more volume. Everything else, it's not, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's the time, I think. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I don't think the tokens, kind of that stuff, it's not free, but order of magnitudes compared to what it was, it's free. I think architecturally, the biggest mistakes are just really, do you understand the use case in terms of scale? Am I overbuilding it, or am I underbuilding it? And really, hey, we're building a custom system. It's for one company. They've got 3 employees. They've been 3 employees for 20 years. Like, we don't need to overbuild and make this, like, so it can handle 100,000 users. Or vice
Hmm.
versa. We do need to build something for scale. Uh, like, it's really important to know that, iteration zero of, oh, okay, we need to like do all the due diligence and kind of put those pieces in place.
Hmm.
Rather than doing the old agile, hey, we're going to do emergent architecture. It will just come out of the requirements as we, magically go down the process.
We'll add database security later.
Yeah, yeah, the regulatory stuff, can all those, all the pieces, yeah, that do matter. It's really good to ask those questions up front and kind of bake that in.
Hmm. Absolutely. We're getting towards the end here, so I want to be sure we answer some of these questions in the chat, and this is along those same lines around cost. But what is the cheapest useful diagnostic a team could run this week? Speaking of.
The doctor tool is definitely a thing.
Hmm.
The one I mentioned, Ponytail, it's free.
Hmm.
It's just a skill that's out there. What is it? There's another one. Talk like a caveman, or maybe it's just called Caveman. It also is a thing that can kind of look at simplifying process. There are a bunch of them out there, and they're always adding new ones. That kind of where I'm at.
Hmm.
Eric?
I always like just going in and saying like, what's my code coverage, right? If it's not there, or uh, you know, kind of going, if I go way back, it's like, look for the most complicated piece of code in the application, or whether it's cyclomatic complexity, or there's a bunch of different measures that you don't need to know what it means. The AI does know what it means because it's like got an A+ in computer science. But if you ask, hey, go find the most complex part of the code base that's the riskiest. It can go through, and it will, 9 times out of 10 come back with some pretty valid things. Uh, and it may not be something you can change, but knowing and having that as something you can keep in mind later is definitely something that's pretty much free and
I'm going to
useful.
add to my answer to go back to that retrospective thing. Um, there are a lot of areas that AI doesn't look at or touch. It needs you to say, please go look at this and fix it. So if we talk about cost and related to architecture, and let's have 95% coverage and things like that, looking at how fast your process goes, all of that is also now open for discussion. You can say, hey, these tests, take way too long. Here are some performance requirements I want to achieve. Go figure it out, and it will get all of that squeezed. Our current problem is entirely in figuring out how do I get a developer to manage more things, delivering faster with quality. And so we're in this weird situation where if I can shrink, each process by a minute or two, and that allows me to do that process more frequently, which adds to the quality on the output side, and without gumming up, human. There's a meme that has been around as long as I've been programming. Two dudes standing on the backs of chairs, sword fighting in the hallway, and it's been, oh, my code's building because we had compute constraints, or oh, unit tests are running because that takes time, all the way down to AI is down. Like that's kind of our big thing now. It's like, oh, we can't do any work because AI doesn't work. So optimizing process, whether it's AI process or human process or cycle time, now, because we go so much faster, if it's slow, it means you're not going as fast as you could be by like orders of magnitude. So
Mhm.
such a boring and exciting topic.
And no, I totally agree with that. One of my legacy code bases, I literally spent almost a day having the AI go through iterations of cleaning up, the unit tests and the execution speed, and it has paid huge dividends.
Yeah, I mean, talk about something that no one really wanted to take on before now, and then now, yeah, you can kind of
Yeah.
spend a day, like you're saying, doing this, whereas previously that probably just was at the bottom of the backlog somewhere. Another question from the group or the audience is, where would you start with a 10-year-old code base? So speaking of kind of along the same themes of running some of this diagnostics, but yeah, any tips you guys can think of?
I think all the ones we've talked about,
Yeah.
looking at what it is, finding all of the errors in past conversations, setting up guardrails so that we can use AI more efficiently. Um, a soft skill, which isn't a code skill, but figure out the team that is managing this 10-year-old code base, where are they at on their AI journey? It doesn't do me
Hmm.
any good to talk about all these cool things if AI to them is, I go to a web page and I type in a prompt and I copy and I paste a thing. That's not much better than a Stack Overflow experience. So there's probably like soft skill or expertise assessment that needs to happen. And then
Hmm.
everything Eric's talked about, and I'll let him go on for that. The actual code base.
Yeah, I think if I agreed that, hey, I was going to use AI to do some work on the code base, and we got past the soft skill side, one, figuring out, does it know how to run it? Can it run it on a new machine? And if it can't, like, start with that, because once you can enable that, now you can have it running on a VM. You can kind of start letting it take on some of those big tech debt tasks that you didn't want to do before, and you can't do it on your machine. You need to like give
Hmm.
it some space where it can kind of churn and work for a while, because a lot of the legacy things I've been running into are oh, I need to go add logging. Sure enough, it spent a day adding logging everywhere, right? And it's super useful, but I like needed to do my day job on my machine as well. So uh, definitely those are kind of the places I would start, I think.
Hmm.
And then everything else I mentioned,
Right,
code
right.
coverage stuff.
Very helpful. Always a big fan of increasing those tests so that we don't get regression for users. Well, thank you guys so much. I think that was really productive. Hopefully that helps our listeners understand a little bit better how to manage their code base with AI and maybe some initial kind of steps to take and best practices there. Just a reminder that the recording will be sent out to all the registrants, so you guys will be able to reference this later. We'll be having another session September 17th on higher ed, it looks like. So tune back in
Oh,
if you guys are interested. But
we love that topic.
absolutely. Well, again, thank you guys. Thanks for a productive conversation, and I'll see you again next month.
You did